All right, so it is, what's the date? I just said it, the 7th. Yes, the 7th of January, 2021, approximately 1:26, and we are here with Mr. Perry Shepard.
Yes.
Perry, if you're comfortable, could you tell me your age and where you're from originally?
93, and I'm from San Francisco, California.
San Francisco. Okay. And could you state your case and training level for those that are curious?
That's a good question. I got up through OT7, Class 8, and that's it.
Okay, perfect. And then this might be a longer answer. Is how did you get into Scientology or Dianetics and Scientology? I mean, that story.
I was a great advocate for science fiction books when I was a kid. I was reading stuff when I was 7 years old. Astounding science fiction and so on. So in 1949, I believe, there was an article in Astounding on Dianetics and Hubbard's whole scene. It was before book one came out. So I thought that was pretty great, so I hustled around. I was up in Northern California. And finally got book one and read that. And so that's for me. I decided I could do something with myself with that. And the next thing I knew, I was on a course in San Francisco. I forget the guy's name, but anyway. And I became very impressed because people would walk into the course. One guy walked in, looked like an 1890 person. Clothes, hat, attitude, the whole shot. Even spoke that way. And after like a week or so, he got so turned around and he had changed his coat. He looked like a hippie. I mean, the whole valence shifted. It was really, I thought, whoa, man. Really impressed the hell out of me. And so then I went and made a lot of money because I was in a merchant fleet, commerce and so on. So then I went down to LA and did the course in LA, HDA.
And that was about 51, I'd say, or 50?
1951, yeah.
51. Okay. All right, and then what was the environment like? Was there a lot of people there for the HDA? Was it a handful of you guys? What was the climate like?
There was quite a few people floating in and out. I went on staff there.
Okay.
And I think I was auditing there for a month or so, and then the whole scene changed there for whatever reasons, and then I was out of there because they closed down for what I forget now, but they closed the org down now. And he was up in LRH was up in Oakland at that time, and so on. So there was not a lot of body of people. A flow of people was around.
Okay. And did you co-audit or?
Yeah, I co-audited.
Okay. Did you take yourself to clear at that point or not yet?
Oh, which?
Did you take yourself up to clear through that co-audit or not?
No. At that time, it was. Tell me what the hell was it? It was. Tell me the incident that will resolve your case. Routine.
Right.
And so that opened the whole deal up, and that's the way it was running at that time. There wasn't a lot of, nothing like it is today. No CS and so on. So you were on your own mostly. Next action I did was went to Phoenix org. I think 1954. Stayed there a while. Then I came back to LA and was in missions, field auditor, and so on. Then in '55, I went to Washington, D.C. and did HCA and TR courses and all the rest of the stuff you get involved in.
Right.
Did the first TR courses they had, which was very interesting. We were in the main org at that time, and everybody ended up in the basement. And they said, "You're on the TR course now," and off we went.
Okay.
Because I knew that a friend of mine had his wife sent a letter to Ron and said, "We're following everything you're doing, but you're not telling us how you do it and what you do. So we'd like to know what you do." I mean, that was the letter she sent him. So we sent a letter back to her and said, "There's a new course for you, all of you guys." That's where the TRs came from. It was amazing. It was one thing after another.
You're right. So people weren't able to do the TRs, and somebody queried him, like, "What are you actually doing?" He's like, "This is how I do it."
Well, yeah, there were no TRs at that time.
Right.
But then there were. We put them in.
Gotcha. This is Washington. What was your post?
Student.
Just a student. Okay. So you weren't on staff.
No.
Okay. Gotcha. What was your post when you were in Phoenix?
I was a student.
Also a student.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Washington, you guys doing the TRs?
And processes too. Yeah, because I was on the HDA, they would do everything. We were running OT processes and different things,
Okay. Did you at any point wonder how it switched from, this book one, which is supposed to be the answer, and it's creating clears and it's prenatals, to now we're talking about other things? Was there an explanation for why Dianetics didn't deliver, that you had to now create other processes, or was that just kind of like washed over?
When I did the HDA course, the OT, I have to think about this one.
Okay.
What came up was the whole theta universe of operating that way. And I became very curious at that time. I was asking all kinds of questions all the time. About Mr. Curious I was. And it was very interesting because what I found out was that people had all kinds of different perceptions, and I didn't. So that hooked me into it even more. So
Because you wanted to develop them?
Oh yeah, because I wanted to find out what they did.
Right.
And so it was just an education for me to wake up. Because when I read the book all the way through, it took me a long time to read the book, about a month, when I first read it when I was in Oakland. So basically, we're running Dianetics, but also getting into the theta side at that time. As far as Scientology was concerned, the Philadelphia Doctor course wasn't out yet, so a lot of the OT material wasn't really pumped. What the OT concept was of exterior. So he sort of fell into everybody's case. And they would always be doing something that would make you wonder how it's all working. So it was just it was a constant expansion. And so that's the way it went.
Were people going exterior in those early days? What processes were being used back then that made them go exterior?
I think it wasn't processes. It was just a natural state of or condition.
Okay.
There was no exterior rundown routine or anything like that. Everybody was like, you worked it up and you did whatever you had to do to keep it moving.
All right, gotcha. All right, so back to Washington, D.C. TRs. How was that early TRs course? Did you the actual first one ever, or
First one ever.
first TRs course ever? You're sitting there.
Yeah.
Okay. Describe how that went.
People got very involved, and the students would be challenging each other for how far they could go, what they could do. People would go into adversarial states opposing you for what you're doing automatically, not to do you in, but just because that's who they were.
Sure.
And they run the hell out of their cases. And so you'd find out pretty fast who was smart, who was dumb, who could make it, who couldn't. But almost everybody that was there at that time was there because they wanted to be and were in it. And it was a brand new experience to have somebody crank it out.
So the bull baiting was pretty tough. Is
Oh,
what you're
yeah.
saying. Okay. And that was only TRs 0 through 4. It wasn't 6 through 9. The upper end doc TRs, correct?
That's a good question. I mean, I got a long history of TRs of doing, doing long hours TRs, and then getting somewhat confused.
So these were all sitting down. They weren't ambulatory where you're dragging each other and look at that wall, walk over to that wall, that kind of stuff. These are the original.
Well, there was some ambulatory walking around.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But the formality of it wasn't that organized
Okay.
at that time. In other words, you didn't have it all written up at that point. This was, I don't know, the course started, I think, 2 weeks after she sent the letter to Ron. So it was brand new. I mean,
Right.
everybody was brand new for everybody.
So it's kind of like just give you a slip of paper with instructions and
Yeah,
like
and go for it.
go for it. What was your biggest win from that course?
The TRs existed, that there was an organization to structure the technology. And doing the TRs brought your confront up to what you needed to do.
First, I want to ask you, you said you went cleared in about 68, 69. Can you describe what that was like for you?
As I recall it, it was one of those deals that say, "Wow, okay, that's nice, that's interesting. What else is new?" Routine. And there was no big deal as far as becoming famous or some other crap, you know.
Based on what you can recall, comparing that state of clear from back then to your eventual OT7, how would you say that those two states differ?
Well, it's like you're being you worked all day for several days in a row. You got no sleep, and you woke up one day and became conscious of all the various things that you're looking at, and that's after. During, it's like, well, okay, so now I'm clear. And I really didn't understand it. at the time. And it took me a number of years before I understood this condition or state I was in. Because at that time was a black 5. You know what that is?
I do.
Yeah. And didn't even know that. And I had this interesting experience one time later, and my time track is kind of screwed up a little bit.
That's fine.
Okay. So later on, I discovered with some seriousness that other people had perceptions, even though I know that there was sound, smell, taste, and all the rest of it, 72 perceptions and all this. But I didn't understand it because I didn't have any of it. It was a blank. No sound, no pictures, no smell, zip.
You're referring to as you recall things. Because in the physical universe, you actually perceive, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm very good in PT.
Right, as recalling.
Anyway, I was talking to this one guy, and he told me, I said, "How are you doing?" He says, "Fine. What are you doing?" So on. And I was talking to him, and I thought to myself, I'm going to ask him about his perceptions. He was a student over in Berkeley for some reason. So he says, "Oh yeah," he says, "I have good perceptions." And I says, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah." And I said, "No, I want you to mock up your car." He says, "Okay." And had a Ford. And I said, "I want you to put the street sign wheels 3 times bigger than they are." Because I had all kinds of perceptions, but I didn't understand it. He says, "Okay." And I said, "What happened?" He says, "It fell over." And I thought to myself, he's demonstrating that he has a visual, like photographs and so on and so forth. That was a kind of a change for me. So I'm always making changes to become better and better and better. And that's my whole history, basically. I'm always expanding. And I wonder where I'm expanding from. And I read Axiom 1 on the 8 course, and so on. Some more expansion. I later on cognited to Axiom 1, and life is basically static. Static can postulate and perceive, and so on. All this good stuff, right? So it's been a constant rise on a tech lineup.
Did you turn on your perceptions?
I found out that I had a higher level of perception, or higher levels. But at the level that most people operate at, I didn't have the 5 perceptions.
Gotcha.
So it made a difference. It made a difference in my reach and my ability to audit, too. It made a lot of difference. So sometimes I couldn't tell where the hell I was on the bridge. But I'm constantly growing all the time. Yeah, so Axiom 11 is as isness, alter isness, and not isness, right? So if you're clean in an area, you're going to get the as isness of something. You're going to look at your PC. You're going to look at a new piece of tech coming out. You're going to look at the apple on the table, and it's an as it is. And you alter it a little bit. You don't like the color of it; it's too green, and you like red ones. So you alter the mock-up. Then you move down into just all the apples and everything you ever did with apples and so on, and you're in the level of isness. This is real. You screw it up and you go into a not isness. So one of the perceptions I had was that you're coming in and you're starting at the top and you can work your way out the bottom and get messed up and become contaminated, or a citizen, natural citizen, not too good shape. Or you can end up as a natural citizen and discover Scientology and Dianetics and all that. And you can do this same axiom from the bottom up, which you handle all the things you pushed away, all your reactive stuff in life, all the not isnesses, and get rid of all those. And you can come up to an isness and play life. Then you come up and you change all your alter isness to as isnesses, and you're back to source. Those are the kind of cognitions I have sometimes.
Sure. Do you feel the LRH kept his promise and that the tech does what it says he will? That does what he says it will?
Absolutely. Sometimes when I look at the tech, my voice is a little screwed up today.
Okay.
And I look at the area in 1950, and the feelings that I had at that time, which was life opens up. Here's the way to go. And if I'm not careful, I can feel it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to kind of watch it sometimes. I don't get spooked.
All right.
Well, I do. So anyway, as far as Ron is concerned, when I read the article in Astounding Science Fiction, I sort of really cognited to what was happening to some degree. And I could get who Ron was and connect. And it's been that way ever since. I really didn't ever meet him in person until I went to D.C. in 1957. And actually spoke to him. Otherwise it was all on tapes. Because the briefing person's got 700 tapes, plus a whole lot more and so on. So you get to know everything about somebody, or to a large degree. Anyway, Ron became the one who was there and was doing it. So I had to get to where he was and do it too.
When you met him, what was that like?
It was a great experience. It was, I was on course at the time, I think. And there was a bunch of students, and everybody was going to lunch, including him. And I remember we were walking someplace, and he was there, and I asked him something. I mean, here's God in your backyard, you know. And I remember what I asked him for many years, then I forgot. Was what do you have for lunch or something? And he gave me a very flat, straight answer, which was, hey, it's real. And I never saw him after that. I saw him on stage once, someplace. But I never talked to him after that.
You asked about what was that for lunch? He said, my ham sandwich or whatever. Last night.
But then I would talk to people who worked with him and very close. People who worked with him as auditors and knew him intimately. And
what would they say about him?
they say he was always ahead of them. Always. He's the top of the bridge. and beyond. And when I was doing the TR course in '57, I knew that he was doing something, and I didn't know what it was. And nobody could tell me what it was. But he was on top of it. And somehow or other I knew that. But I didn't have the control of it that he had. So I followed him.
Something I've always been curious about is, okay, 52 is a Philadelphia doctor, of course. He describes a lot of OT phenomena. But the formal OT levels weren't released until much later. So how was it that there was OT processes happening and OTs being, I guess, created, or drills happening, and he knew what an OT was and described it, yet those levels, or the path to that, wasn't developed until much later? How does that reconcile?
It's a good question. When I did the HDA in 51, the whole concept and idea of OT was there. And can you function exteriorly and have a consciousness about it? In other words, can you be conscious and aware? You can know about it, but can you be it?
Right.
And to some degree, running some of the processes of gold balls, which was a great number, you'd create gold balls and do funny things with them, was easy to do. But the comprehension of what you were doing wasn't. I don't think I've actually looked at when exactly the various steps came into the public domain.
Okay.
It answers your question, because when did all the various things become within the domain of the auditors, or the people in Scientology? The auditors were a special group. They're always the head of everything, and they have to be, just to stay alive, or to stay functional, you know. So that's the best answer I got.
Okay, fair enough. Corollary to that is the changes. So if you say this is how you make an OT, these are the steps, I've never been able to rationalize in my head, then now why are we dealing with BTs? When an OT didn't, to get to the OT state, didn't require that before, with the original OT levels.
I see. Okay. Clear, he avoided it because it was too high a gradient. You get up to OT1 and say, look at the wall and so on. Still a too high a gradient. You come up to OT2 and he's saying, here's the whole track. Here's everything we can imagine that's ever happened to everybody and all of us, etc. But here's the layout of the bridge of walking up and seeing God's second in command or something in heaven, which is one of the OT sections. And all the various steps that are in there, and entities, VTs, were never mentioned.
Right.
And the person coming up would say, they're totally ignorant. Flip it over and do OT3, and they are now real. But the person who goes through that can come through it in many different ways. They can come through and say, oh, Ron has invented a new thing, and he's wrote it on a piece of paper, and we'll follow him, and I'll believe him that it's true. They have no reality on it whatsoever. Somebody else comes up a notch above it, and he says, I think I feel kind of funny sometimes. I don't know where it's coming from. So you have a whole gradient scale coming up to consciousness of the sections of the entities. So the main shift on it was on OT3.
I guess I'm wondering why. If you were at old OT7 and you've done these drills, because I don't delve too much into them because I don't want to stir anything up in my own case. But I do know what they are. And it seems to be mostly kind of drills and very almost positive gain as opposed to auditing out entities. So
Or what level are you talking now?
I'm sorry?
What level were you talking about?
Like all the old OT levels up to old OT7. Because none of those mention
Okay, now I got you. Okay, good.
So then, okay, now you're OT7. It wasn't called old OT7, it was OT7. I'm an OT7, and all of a sudden, I don't know, I'm saying all of a sudden. At one point, now you have to go back and do a new OT3, which deals with this whole thing. So you do your OT drug rundown, and then your audited knots, and then your supposedly solo knots, although there's I guess controversy as to whether it should be solo or not. So that is where I don't understand, and I was hoping that you, being a tech terminal and having lived through it, could shed some insight as to why you believe old OT7 wasn't enough, and then you had to go back to auditing BTs. And did he know about? Well, yeah, because history of man, he described them, so he knew about them. So. So the sequence is a little bit confusing to me, I guess.
He knew about the structure. From his stint in South Johannesburg, Johannesburg. Because the story that I heard from him is that he was running a BT and got pissed off at the BT and told him to fuck off. And then the BT banged on him hard. I can't remember where I got all that, but I got different stuff in different places.
It's fine.
Anyway, Ron got the message. Don't fuck with him, but fuck with him anyway. That's the way it goes.
Gotcha.
Don't mess with him, but mess with him anyway.
Gotcha.
But he had some better view, but he still considered them a bunch of ants and bugs and indistinct. So what they were, the way they were. But he still didn't at that time give them the full power that they had. And even today, the church is still not giving them the full power they have.
Do you think those old OT levels then can come back and be run after you handle your solo knots case? And get benefit from them, or should it just not even be considered anymore?
That's a good theoretical question. If you consider the concept of knots, what it implies that if we pick up the simplicity of valences, if you go into Uncle John's valence, and take on his characteristics, and you think, well, so what? Big deal. But if you take on Uncle John's people, then you got a whole different thing, right?
Right.
So in reviewing it, in my opinion, going to 7, it didn't cut it. Why did he expand? I haven't thought of this in a while.
You're doing fantastic. This is incredible.
That section of it So it wasn't clear where the charge was. And he went back and he redid it. He expanded it, and that is a point of where OT3 came into being. I'm getting that it didn't work. And he went back to 3 and did it again. With a better intention. To get it more real.
Okay.
Well, why that is exactly, I don't remember.
All right, that's fair enough.
Okay.
Question about clearing just in general. Because Dianetics, he says, is a scientific tome, and he's created clears. And then off in the 50s, he's saying we know how to create clears, and we're clearing people. So how in the world did the first clear become John McMaster's in 65? That doesn't make any sense to me. Because the definition of clear apparently is a clear is a clear is a clear, including the Dianetic clear. So unless everyone was a release, what happened to the status of those clears? And that's always been this is like the question I really want answered. Of all of them.
They made a big deal, John, when he went clear. It was at St. Hill. The first accredited, validated, clear on a meter check, test check. In other words, they gave him the works.
There was, John McMaster, 65. But for example, in I think 50 or 51, I think it was 50, there was a demonstration where LRH brought a woman to be and presented her as a clear, and so the journalists were like kind of making fun of her, bullying her and whatnot, and that's like, what tie did I wear with it? You know what I'm saying? She's gonna fail that test miserably. It's unfair. But he presented her as a clear. So that, if you're saying you can make it clear, you should be able to make it clear, and not, I think this person's a clear, or I think we're making clears, and then 15 years later, it's like now we have our first one, because what happened to all the people that ostensibly went clear in those 15 years? And that's my question. And my thing is like, LRH appears to do that a lot, where it's like, we've got this state, but he doesn't really, because or else he wouldn't have to write 30 other processes later on. So me, of course, being a human, I've rationalized it, saying, well, he probably made those clear, but then he tried to make these guys, they didn't work, so he developed more stuff to try to help these new guys, and those guys were now helped, but there's a new breed of cat, and so I've got to now expand the tech further. And that's how I've rationalized it. But I don't know. I don't know how that's always been a mystery to me. And I can't, I'd like to be able to defend every single part of the tech scientifically.
Well, if you go back to book 1, then the potential for clear was there, right?
Yeah. But he said he made clears. He said it was already cases done.
Right. There was a clear state with the tech as it was developed. It did not have OT5.
Sure. No.
It didn't, and so forth.
Right.
Even the concept of having the whole sections at that time in 51 was not there.
Right.
It was clear, and then he would say, oh yeah, the condition, not the conditions, but the dynamics, when we get up to OT OT 9 or 8, and we don't touch that because it's later on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's talking about OT sections, right?
Oh, sure.
Not going to go there. John could do everything personally that was expected of a clear. And what I get would be that somebody could go clear and they could still have shit dripping off the side of their cheek or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being nasty here.
Okay.
They could still have problems or manifest low-tonedness or various phenomena. But from what I understood, they gave John the works. They checked him on a meter, plus and forward, mock-up, unmock-ups, and so on and so forth. The whole number was what I got at the time.
Okay.
So it was a validation for somebody who had achieved fully the state.
And homosexuality wasn't a disqualifier.
No, it was not at all.
Okay.
It was not an issue because obviously some of the people were gay. And that wasn't the point. The point was it's an aberration with the current social setup.
Right. It's more of a moral thing.
It's a moral thing, right? And so the mock-up that I got at the time was so they're gay, and you go for the core of the person, and that's not an issue one way or the other. Practically, you're not heterosexual either. You're just who you are.
Right.
You're not hung up in this cross
Right.
deal, right?
No, it's good. That's a good explanation for it. It's just funny that how the current church, or when I was in, I mean, vehemently anti-gay, just like
Well,
you couldn't practice if you were gay.
yeah, I mean, they got into the whole number of if you're violating the social level at that point,
Right.
then they're different from me to too big a degree. People forgot they're basically themselves. They're 15 girls and 15 guys all at the same time. What the hell?
How do you feel about the tech that no one really does anymore, like creative processing and black and white processing and those kind of things?
That's a good question. When I was in D.C., they did black and white. They ran OT sections. I can't. Sometimes my brain doesn't work too well. I'm so goddamn sketched out that I can't get the specific. Right?
That's good. No problem.
Yeah, right. I don't get acknowledged too much for that, but you did a good job. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Give me the question again.
How do you feel about the tech that no one really uses anymore, like black and white processing, creative processing, things like that? The golden balls that you mentioned, to go exterior.
It was too high a gradient at the time for the people, for the level that they were at. They couldn't fully comprehend gold balls in 51. So they're jacking around with it and dunking in a coffee cup to see if it would disappear some shit. But if you take the gold ball and say it's a mock-up process at a certain level, and you're doing it, and you can change its color, its size, and you can make it as big as the room and cause everybody to disappear or whatever. It was too high a gradient as far as I could see. People couldn't do it. They couldn't comprehend the fact that they could create an apple in their hand and say to somebody, taste it. And the person would say, I don't like the particular taste of that apple. And you say, good job, Brad. But to some people, you would do that and they would just look at you and they go, okay, I did it. And they were not at the level.
Sure.
But I did that sometimes. A good example would be mock-up processes. When it first came out, Ron would say, well, mock up a tree, change its color, change its size. And some people could do it, and some people couldn't. Why? Because their case level wasn't up to the point where they could have that themselves as a reality. If you move it up to Axiom 1 and say, well, the PC or pre-OT is operating at a level of Axiom 1, then life is basically static, and the static can postulate and perceive. And you say, wow, can you postulate and perceive a tree? Yeah, you can. There's a tree. Can you experience it? Yeah, more or less. Right? Can I be the tree? I can be, do, or have it. And here you're looking at experience of the person actually moving into the territory, doing the drills, doing the processes, and doing CCHs with a reality that the auditor says, touch the wall. And the guy does it, bang, quick, without ever moving his hand. So the auditor says, okay, now touch the wall. And the auditor was at lunch, right? He didn't get it.
Right.
The guy had touched the wall.
Yes.
But nobody acknowledged it. So he was left behind until they caught up with him, and then he could catch up with them. So that's how I look at that, walking up the ladder. And some people are, man, they got incredible abilities from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And you say mock up a gold ball, and this is what color you want.
Sure.
And so on and so on. Does that answer your question?
In a roundabout way, but yes.
You want a direct way? Maybe I'll give you a better answer. Helps me again.
Well, you answered the question. Because I get that it's too steep a gradient for too many people. But how do you feel about people just picking up a book and doing them? Just like willy-nilly. So new people are like, I want to, what's the Scientology stuff? Oh look, we're supposed to like create, mock up two balls in the back corner of the room and let's just do that. Advised or not advised?
I think that the level of education psychically, psychedelically, if you like, is limited socially. So the person who would pick up a Scientology book and it would say these are the 72 perceptions, which there are, and the person would pick it up and he'd say, oh, I'm supposed to feel gravity, and he would go, okay, that means that what does that mean? It means gravity. Pull. I'm standing. Okay, I'm totally controlling gravity. They have to fit their reality into a level. So if you say you can be exterior to George, and you can go in the other room and tell what time it is on the clock, and why don't you do that right now? And the person says, what do you mean? Doesn't get it at all. So it would explain the whole entire bridge this way.
So probably the average humanoid would not be advised to just start creative processing then.
Yeah. So
Okay.
to some degree it was a limitation that Ron had, because what he had to do is mock up a process, check it out, find out that it's cool and so on, or just do it in his head sometimes, because he had connections going all over the place to different sources. Right. Now I blew what I was saying. It gets crazy.
That's fine. I understand you. You're still auditing to this day? Wow.
Oh yeah.
You never stopped for 70 years of it.
70 years as an auditor. You've heard and seen probably everything possible.
A lot. So I found out that my education was exponentially increased the more I audited. I didn't realize it at first,
Interesting.
but it just kept on expanding and expanding and expanding. I would have people come. One guy came in, didn't speak any English, spoke numbers. I was surprised. I get surprised sometimes, not too often. He would come in and he was sitting there, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" He says, "1492." And I thought, this guy's crazy. And I said, "Hello," and he says, "5692." This is what he was doing, right? And I thought to myself, what the fuck is this? You know, and I finally said, and I very carefully said, "What is your name?" And he came up with another number, he says 592, or something like this, right? And the guy's insane, right? And I'm thinking, and I don't know how I got out of that, but I think I took it and I did it for an hour or whatever it was. I'm in the HGC, right? At least the way it was at that time. And I got rid of him finally. I mean, you know, what are you going to do? For stuff like this, every once in a while you get something that's absolutely impossible, cannot exist, but it's staring you in the face. You know, they would send me out they sent me out handling some staff member one time. I got in, I was a girl, and I sat down. I forget why they did that, but it was a PC. They sent me out to handle the PC. I said, "Hi, how are you?" And she started crying. Then she started wailing. Then she started really blowing up and down. I said, "Okay, fine." So I sat there for an hour doing that. So after a while, you get to say, well, it's whatever is in front of you when it's in front of you, and that's what you're handling. And it's not some canned piece of this, you know?
Yeah, I've experienced things even just as a book auditor. I was running repeater technique one time, and this lady was very low toned. And I'd say, you know, repeat whatever the phrase was, I don't remember. And there was an audible clicking coming from like her skull every time she'd say that. And then I switched the phrase, kind of just to switch it up and see if we can get a better phrase and get deeper to the engram, and it started clicking twice. And depending on the phrase, was one click or two clicks coming from her skull. Like, what? And that was before I did my ProTRs. It was kind of rough because I was like, and then she asked me, "Do you hear that?" And I was like, what do I say? Because I can't really evaluate, you know what I mean? So I think I said, like, hear what?
That was worse, I think.
I think so. But whatever. It ended up okay. That was early in my career. But that was bizarre. So I can understand.
But that is a good indicator of your ability to reach out and really connect with what's going on in her click, and then yours. And get the difference between the two of them and not go crazy.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And that's a level of ability that happened to a lot of people, including yourself, that wasn't validated for some period of time, even 5 minutes or 5 years or longer. And it was one of the errors that was made, in my opinion, that the auditors were never fixed.
Which brings me to my next topic. What do you think went wrong with Scientology?
Well, I may have just answered it in front of your question, but one of the reasons that I think it went wrong is that Ron moved through the bridge. Because I was always looking to see where the hell did he get this from. And what I got that he did, he followed the stuff that went on in his universe initially, first. He carried out through the parents, through the wartime, through the events and so forth, all the stuff that he wanted to in China, all over the planet, all the stuff that he did. They're very funny, and I think laughable sometimes as he's the captain of the boat that's looking at the submarine and so on and so forth. And all the stories that he had the ability to create and mock them up. Many, 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 many different things. I'm not going to get lost here in a minute. See, I don't talk to people this way usually, because they require me to stay sane and to stay on the same track. That's all I'm saying. People would make the gains. And the auditors were not trained to at least be trained in recognizing the winds and the change in state. But when the PC wins and you're busy thinking of what you're going to do next, you fucked the session up and you blew the session, basically. Because the PC will pick it up, they did not get understood. If that had been handled, which is via training routine, where you're trained to perceive what you created, which is the win in the person. Here's George. I hope your name isn't George, because sometimes they end up with secondary names, and I pick them up. And here's George, and you teach him the auditor. George is now the auditor, and I'm going, big cognition. And he says, tell me that win. Or he says, oh, I see that win. And he tells you what the fuck it was, if he's good enough, right? But at least he can get you to talk about it and put the win out. But the auditors would miss it.
So the TR4.
There was no TR to do this.
Still isn't.
Pardon?
Still isn't. Right.
To listen, yeah. But what he's saying, he says it over and over again. I'm reviewing the tech also. One of the things I recently read was, Ron says, listen to the PC. I was on one of the doc tapes, which I'm listening to again, still, forever. And he says, you listen to the PC. And then he got into what that meant. And I thought to myself, that's what I do. I listen to the person, and they tell me. Then I know that I got it. But I also know that I'm listening. I put the listen into them. They know I'm listening to them, and they'll just start talking to me. So what the ruin here is, if you're going to duplicate the PC, you don't become their bank. You become that experience. But you're not doing it inside your auditor head. You're doing it out here, so you can use, because the force that comes out of that stuff on the PC will blow your mind, as you well know. You connect to the PC and what they're going through in full. You're sitting there being the PC. You think you're going to be able to audit them? Hell no. So that's my answer.
I've never heard that. That's brand new to me. Thank you.
That's my view.
Yeah, no, that's good, because everyone blames Miscavige or says this or is that, or some kind of tech particular thing.
Let me finish the thought.
Okay.
Now that I got it back. I hope everybody loves this, whatever it is. Yeah. Ron had to have had extraordinary experiences to recognize that he had to listen. But when he said he had to listen, he would go and become the PC. He could tell you, in my opinion, exactly where the PC was at. If they were in a grief charge on mother, he would come up and say, "Oh, and tell me about that." And he would wave at him sometimes. "Tell me about that." And what is that? What's that? What are you looking at? But he would be touching it already and hitting on it for the PC to become conscious of it. And the PC would go, "Oh, let me tell you about this."
Wow.
Now that's a skill that the auditor would have to make what the PC has real. And he gets into the four-flow routine here and make the whole thing wired so the PC knows the auditor already has it, so it's safe to give it to him. And I think Ron got so good at everything he did that he moved so high that he forgot the rest of the people have to hear it. They have to be told what to do. They have to be told it's okay to listen on the inside of somebody's head. It is not an overt to pervade somebody else's reality. And I think that was missed. And Ron didn't understand how somebody could be so dead that you can literally take a dead tree and bring it back to life if you really want to do it to the tree. But you got to be the tree. The whole thing could be revamped, reassembled, re-put together, and the tree would grow up out of it. That was what you would call an OT ability. But they didn't think that way. And it seemed to me I did. Now, where that all goes, I don't know.
Operating exterior, describe what that is to you. Because to some people it is literally being able to go, I'm here, I'm there. For others it's just a sense of bigness.
And it's not being here, it's being over there, looking at you right now. And you look different from the side than you do from the front. And you're waving your head, but you're also moving your next potential question around. And you're having fun by being found out that it's good to be duplicated with what is actually happening with you, and you're spot on, and you have a whole lineup here, and you're happy with the lineup, and you're happy that it's a happy creation that you're being accepted for what you can do, and whatever you might do here is totally okay. So your creations are accepted before they start. That's exterior, and that's where I'm at right now.
I like it. And when did you first acquire that this lifetime?
Well, I didn't cognite to this skill, which I think is what it is,
Sure.
until much, much later. And I went through a whole lot of courses and processes and the L's, and Pierre gave me the L's. I didn't mention that, but he did that. And so on and so forth. And gradually come to the conclusion that I didn't have the same kind of perceptions that the average person did. Because I used to say to somebody, you like apple pie? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, how does it taste? And he said, well, pretty good. I said, well, have a piece of apple pie and eat a piece of apple pie now. And what's the taste you're having now? And he would tell me. So I did all kinds of shit like this, things like this, and finally discovered that there were 72 perceptions, and something happened to me to make me different. And here I'm again not answering the question because I forgot it. Say, what am I answering?
Your answers are perfectly fine because I'm getting.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So anyway,
And I'm gonna edit this, so it's gonna,
okay, but that, whatever your question was, that's an answer to.
Thank you. I can have it. All right. So say you, a couple of questions. What do you plan to do next lifetime? Are you coming back here, or are you going to continue to audit? What are your plans?
I just intend to continue, and if it's like one of my PCs, she's got 5 of her family members from the track, and they're all on different planets at this time. And I think maybe I should be like her. But I've people everywhere. I say maybe I should mock up everybody collective that was, is, and going to be all at once that do exist now, and say, okay, I'll have that as my terminal. And I say, how is this going to be? How do I mock up the next lifetime when the mock-up is I don't go unconscious. I don't go through the channel and pick up another body as through becoming implanted halfway. What's my mock-up is to become better, to be bigger, to have my full capacity functional, so that I can set up a postulate, an admin scale, and say, how do I want the world to be, and how many people can I collect to agree with me? And I do that sort of now. One of my ideal scene would be collect a certain number of people, 12, for example, could be any, and get them all to have one goal on an admin scale, and to for everybody to play the game of having something that they want to do, create, and bring into existence, and know how to do that, and share it with 12 other people, and have 12 people in a group simultaneously create this way, so that you can have a bigger game in a bigger place from where we are now, and however that would be. So it's open.
Okay. Now, taking things back to more of a practical world level, we had yesterday, I don't know if you watched the news, we had a big kerfluffle in Washington with protesters storming the Capitol and whatnot. We have a very divided country with left and right and this and that. If you could apply Scientology to this broad scene, what would you do? What solutions do you think, either from green and white or red and white, do you think need to be applied so that things settle down and start approaching sanity?
Well, I'll give you a hypothetical answer.
Okay.
I'll see if I can remember it now. All the people in Washington, D.C., and I say all of them, the plus, the minus, the who, the middle don't care, whatever, all of them, would have to be impressed with something that they could be impressed with. In other words, that they something, an event that could occur that would impress them to such a degree that they would all stop, take a look at the way it is, and come to a conclusion as a group. All 100,000 of them, or however many there are. The number doesn't even matter. But the size does, because Washington, D.C. is of a certain size. And to form a group here in L.A. with however number of beings it would take to take over Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. With the truth of who everyone is in the Washington, D.C. conglomerate group, and wake them all up at the same time, only temporarily because you don't want to ruin their lives, and have them all join together and become conscious of what the action is and what it could be. In other words, the way it's been, the way it is, and what could be. Time, place, form, and event. And wake them up to the fact that they have to change, basically. They're not changing their valences. They're not changing the public. They're not changing Trump, anybody. They're just changing themselves. And they would all cognite that they would change the scene. And they would become conscious that the recognition of it, they would be curious. They would have to know. They would have no possibility of not wishing to know. And the root out, even it may not be totally fixed yet, but it would be there. It would be the root out to themselves in their biggest serial life existence. In other words, here's the road.
What sort of a...
The road is Scientology.
What sort of an event could impress them, though, all simultaneously like that?
Then the people that I would create here would be 25 people who would go full OT. And I don't mean body OT. I mean OT as we imagine it to be.
The early day OT with full perception, full control.
Right. Not just of the physical universe, but of the entire universes and of the entire whatever is creating all of these universes. Because I did that one time. It was impressive. And have that be here and present them that with this. And that's what they would become. Now that's an OT mantra. If you want a practical way to do that, then to reprint the axioms in such a fashion that they would be readable to the people first time through.
And understandable.
And understandable. And demo mock-ups, pictures. If they couldn't hear, there would also be verbal and sound on a magic speaker that would suddenly appear above Washington, D.C.
That'd be impressive.
Everybody would get educated to the truth of what and who they are, and they would pick it up and run with it, and go with it, and expand with it. So it would be unstoppable.
So it would have to be a spiritual experience.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because they have their entire track, they're running around with it.
Right.
Full dramatization. They got the last 2,000 years of impact from every kind of suppressive you can think of, and everybody else that's on the downside, pushing down, here we go, where this is all survival at the bottom, and so on. And all of that would have to be changed.
That's a big endeavor.
I see that as a possibility if the Scientologists come together. And what you're doing, for example, is on that road. But they have to be made aware consciously that they have this themselves as their original basic. Because one of the cognitions I had was, oh, Ron told me what basic was OT1, OT2, no, excuse me, root 1, root 2. But that's not the basic. See, you think about it just now, and you say, oh, there it is. How the hell am I going to get that across? And you know what it is, but there is no agreement yet.
At least not without psychedelics or
So I would that's what I would present. It's a little hard to present it sometimes, because normally when I'm talking to somebody who's interested, Scientologist, and I start to do this kind of a rap, and what comes up, the room becomes full of masses and pieces and broken pieces and broken pieces. When you broke piece of persons broken, the whole number is this. This is a gigantic 3D puzzle, man, that's filled the room full of it, and I'm trying to get it through, and it's hard, because then I have to say, I'll throw a piece over there, maybe that'll get there, and so on. So what we're handling is a room full of stuff. And to acknowledge that and say, okay, fine, grant that beingness, and I'm going to throw them a kernel. So I always carry this with me, and I never knew why and how until recently. That I have this intention that's carried me through all kinds of shit since I was a kid. When I first got into this in the Catholic Church, and really got blown out. And Scientology picked it up, and I picked it up, and here we are.
Awesome. Now, is there any question I should have asked you that I haven't? Or anything else you want to talk about?
That's a good question. Just this. Not a question, but a statement. I see you're on the road of going where I'm talking about to everybody. So am I. I have not quit. I'll never quit. Because all you really need to have, be, and do is that you are the truth. So any question that you have to ask me would be, and this goes for everybody, what's your next step? Can I help you? Can I join with you? Can I cause it to become real? Yes. We all can do that. We can ask everybody, where are they going? Do they want to get there? Have they already started and got stopped? All these questions are all available to help become who we all are.
Rock on.
Thank you.
Now, I asked Bob to do this. I think I'm going to ask every Scientologist to do this. We've lost a few people along the way for whatever reasons. And I think as these spread, they're going to be watching these because there's just going to be an endless curiosity as to what the heck is happening with this activity. So, look at the camera and just give a message right here to those who have given up, to those who've fallen off the bridge, to those who have become disaffected and been like, I'm done. What do you want to say to them?
Well, to all the beings, whatever form you have, whether it's human or non-human or any other form of consciousness, but primarily to human beings, as we're talking to people too, that you have the truth, you have the way, and everybody who's listening to this, be a Scientologist, a Dianeticist, a religionist, or this, an ism, that, or whatever you are, we are all bring the truth fully out so everybody is free to be, do, and have everything you want to be, do, and have. So we're all behind it. I'm behind it. I'll never give up. I invite you to come back into looking for yourself fully and totally, because now it's here for you to find and to become aware of it and move on to your own future and your own goals and the way you want existence to be. And when I say existence, I mean full existence for everybody. So I thank you very much for listening.